Donnie, I appreciate you taking some time to come join
No
me
worries.
today. So I'd like to start off with basically how I start all these off, and I'm trying to get people to hear the background and understand your backstory and how you actually ended up where you are today in the
Yeah.
Marines.
Cool. Yeah. So it goes back to probably as far as I was like a little kid. Just I remember riding home from like a little league game, in the car with my mom, and during obviously some crazy times, in the world, probably like 2005. I looked at my mom and I was like, I think someday I want to join the Marine Corps. And my mom, being a classic protective mother, she looked at me and she said, "Well, that's something you'll never do because you're not going to go do that." And I like kind of was like, well, I'm gonna do it still, kind of just in the back of my head, and waited until the end of high school. Same thing, reattacked it. I was like, Mom, I think I'm gonna join the Marines. She's like, No, you need a college degree, college education. I grew up with a family that just, I mean, I had the opportunity to go to college, so I felt like I should at least give it, the old college try. Not
Yeah.
the, so I actually made kind of like a blood oath with one of my best friends in high school. We said we're going to go give college a try for the first year, and if it doesn't work out, we're both going to come back and we're going to join the Marine Corps. So we went off to college and we were finishing up, and we were doing all right. I mean, we weren't doing great, but we were probably like getting C's and B, like nothing crazy good, nothing. I mean, we weren't failing out by any means, but we both called each other and we're like, yeah, this isn't it. Let's join the Marine Corps. So he goes back and he signs papers, becomes a reservist within like 5 minutes. And I like kind of got cold feet, tried to go back to college for a summer semester. I was like, I really got to give this another try. So I went for another 6 months, and then, I mean, long story short, it ended up summer kind of concluded, and I was like, all right, I need some direction and guidance in my life and a little bit more structure. Um, I knew I wanted to work. I was just the kind of guy that liked to work with my hands, and I liked to earn every dollar that I ever made. I didn't want to. The idea of just sitting in an office and not doing a lot of work and making a ton of money, as sweet as that sounds, was just never something I was interested in. I always wanted to do that, like down in be in the dirt, digging holes. Like I loved some of my favorite jobs were literally just working construction or doing landscaping. Like that's what I enjoyed doing. So the Marine Corps was kind of an easy fit. I had a little bit of history with my family from the Marine Corps, so I went in, and it was a short process just because of my situations. And I think I talked to the recruiter for less than a month, and I was already on my way to boot camp. Not a lot of research at all. Had no idea what I was going into. Just showed up in the airport and just did the boot camp deal down in Paris Island, and definitely just kind of shocked my world and it kind of aligned my life where it needed to go. And I would say it took a few years for me to get on track and kind of be the person that I'm starting to be proud of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like early on in my Marine Corps career, it was chaos. It was just like every other like young Marine. It was just a lot of financially making poor decisions, just acting kind of a fool and acting like coming back from my first deployment and just acting like you're untouchable, that kind of
Right.
thing. And it took me a while to learn from that and kind of grow as an individual. But just those early steps of joining up and being where I am today. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for the Marine Corps. So I'm pretty happy I made that decision to join in the first place. I know I'm kind of my storytelling's a little all over the place, but
Yeah. No.
so yeah, I went to boot camp, Paris Island, finished up Paris Island, went to SOI, East Coast, to Camp Lejeune, Camp Geiger. Finished it near the end of that, got the opportunity. Recon came in, did one of their motivating, like, do you want to be recon? And I was like, absolutely, that sounds super cool. So I signed up for that, got shipped out to San Diego, spent a few months in Marines awaiting reconnaissance training, got real good at swimming. Honestly, prior to the Marine Corps, I was good at, I mean, I was swimming in canals and lakes and pools, but nothing competitive or fast. But joining MART, being in Marines awaiting reconnaissance training, got pretty good at swimming, swam a lot. It was
I
basically
imagine.
all we did all day. And that didn't work out. Definitely, I've been trying to right that wrong, and basically ever since then. That was the first time I've ever like quit something in my life.
Right.
I mean, I could sit here and tell you all these stories, but in the end, it was just me kind of quitting on myself, a young guy. Definitely took some learned from that experience in my life. But I quit, and they sent me over to 1st Battalion 7th Marines, and that's where that story started. Which I mean, looking back, if you believe in everything happens for a reason, I mean, going to Suicide Charlie was definitely tip of the hat to that. I mean, going to Suicide Charlie was definitely another just kind of life-changing experience for me. I can't begin to like even explain the leadership that I had in just that company. I mean, I was there for about 7 years, and just the people I was surrounded with on a day. Yeah, I mean, the people that I was surrounded with definitely had everything to do with the kind of person I am today too. So I was super lucky. I checked in there. Sergeant Serrano, or Staff Sergeant Serrano now, he was my squad leader checking in, and I'm not sure what your experience was. Did you met him? Yeah, so you were there on the 14 deployment. So you were definitely,
yeah.
I mean,
Serrano, oh
yeah. His reputation is just outstanding, and it's exactly that, just a leader that I really try now to emulate. And I realize now, like looking back, I'm like, I was the biggest pain in the ass for that man. And I've called him and texted him like, I apologize for the pain and the stress I put you through. But I was just that classic like belligerent Lance Corporal, and didn't really know what was going on. Was just kind of doing what I was told and trying to adapt and orient myself and make decisions. But it's just one of those things where I think, unfortunately, and just the way my life is planned out, I think I'm kind of a slow learner in a lot of ways, and it takes me a lot longer than your average person to figure out like what's going on and kind of adjust and start making the right decisions. So yeah, I checked in the 1-7. We kicked out on that first Afghan deployment with 7th Marines in 2012. Got some experience there, just how to operate basically in just crazy conditions, and kind of learned how that environment went. And then we got back, and I believe, I'm trying to remember if I had to extend for that deployment. I think so. I think I did have to extend to make that deployment because I had spent so long in MART. It basically messed up my contract to the point where, like, okay, if you're going to go on this deployment, you're going to have to extend. So I ended up extending. I'm trying to remember the timeline. If I re-enlisted it. Yeah, so I extended, and the way it was supposed to work out was I was supposed to get back from Afghanistan and get out immediately. And Captain Howard, Major Howard now, I believe, he was the CO at the time, and I'll never forget, we were on like a range or something, and I was counting ammo or handing out something, and he comes over, and he's like, he told me something. He was messing around with me getting out of the Marine Corps, and I said, sir, you could have me scrubbing porter shitters for the next 3 weeks. I don't care. I'm getting out in 3 weeks. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I'll be gone. And he's like, okay, very well, Hess, and like walked away. And like not 2 weeks later, I was walking into his office with a reenlistment package, and he's like, oh, this is good. He still messes with me to this day about it. He's like, oh, I remember when you said you were going to get out of the Marine Corps, but I just kind of had an epiphany, I guess, and decided that sticking around was something I wanted to do, and I'm glad I did. I would say that first reenlistment was one of the most difficult times in my life, because I was watching Higgs' interview with you, and I understand that struggle, that decision, and he was 6 years past. He was 6 years past. He had done 6 more years of service than I had at this decision point for me. But I understand do I want to get out? There's a lot of things that factor in, and honestly, for me, it's never been like am I willing to put up with the Marine Corps bullshit? It's been, do I want to put my family through it? Because those are the people that those are the people that don't get to really choose what's going on with me. And unfortunately, I don't see my family for sometimes. So my family in New York, I'll see maybe once a year. My wife's family in Atlanta or in Georgia, we see them once a year too. So I'm not, and then we talk about the time I'm away from home and all that fun stuff. So that's what for me was like the harder process of making that decision and realizing like, hey, I got to make what's best for me, and then everything else will hopefully follow and fall into place. So got back from that, the second Afghan deployment in 2014, and made that decision to re-enlist, and did that. And then Kuwait was our next deployment, right? So 2015, 2016,
And in
right?
2015 we left and then merged into
Okay, yeah.
2016.
That was my first. I would say so that was our first holiday deployment. So that was like from what, like September to February or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And that was probably the hardest deployment for me, just being away for the holidays, because the holidays is just like my brain has been trained for so long. I went to boot camp during the holidays, but that doesn't even matter. But your brain's trained for so long, like this time of year, you're gonna see family,
Yeah.
and to be deployed during all of those times, it brings you really close with the guys you're with on that deployment, but it also can kind of send you into a crazy spiral of emotion.
It does.
Which is something like my time in the Marine Corps I've learned and kind of grew an appreciation for, because I've always been, early on, it was a very like, I guess a sharp edge maybe leader, where I was like, keep your fucking personal problems at home and keep your work separate kind of thing. And being deployed on the holidays kind of made me realize, like, okay, deployments are hard, especially for these younger guys. It's the first time away from their families, and they're on a deployment where, I mean, yeah, we're running trap missions, but something could happen where these guys, and they understand that they could be called to go do something that could be a little bit dangerous. So I think that was a good learning experience for me as a leader, kind of learning like, hey, holidays are hard. Like, this is hard for me, and this is my third deployment. Like, this is pretty hard. I was like, okay, well, I got to look at these younger guys and make sure that they're doing all right, because just the way the living conditions, the way we were doing things there, like we were running night trap. So like my guys, we didn't see the sun for like a month at a time. You know what I mean? Like I think we were running, was it 3 weeks or was it only a week? I don't even remember at this point.
It was long cycles.
Something crazy.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was long cycles, and we wouldn't see this. I mean, we basically would see the sun for about 10 minutes a day, and then we'd be in our little freaking being creatures in our rooms, like with the windows blocked. And so yeah, that was definitely a learning experience as a leader. And from there, got back from that deployment, decided that I needed a little bit of a change in scenery. Just being out in 7th Marines is awesome. I mean, if I could be the guy that would stay in a company for my entire career, that would be Suicide Charlie would be it. But just kind of having an urge to reach out and kind of further my knowledge in other areas, because I knew that like the idea of being in a tree line with a compass was something that I was much less familiar with than standing in a desert with a sickle stick. Like, I'll find everything I need to find with that, but compass and the tree line is a different story for me. So I knew that heading over to Lejeune, I'd be able to kind of tap into that, kind of further in my knowledge in that area. So I pushed over to Lejeune, checked into 3-8 Kilo Company, and knocked out a UDP with them. My time there was very short. It was only a year, and I went through a lot of courses while I was there. So I went through like a sergeant's course. I taught a couple. I apologize for my cough. Sergeant's course. I taught a couple like corporal's courses and lance corporal seminars. I went to ISALC, which is Infantry Small Unit Leaders course, which was an amazing course. I wish everybody got the opportunity to go to. It's a sergeant's course, so everybody that's a sergeant in the infantry basically gets a chance to go to it. I went to the McQuist course, which is where I'm at now. I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, so I was at courses almost the entirety of my time there. And when I was back, I was just kind of, when I was with my squad, I was just trying to, I knew that my time there was going to be short. So I was just trying to, as quickly as I could, develop young leaders that would be motivated in staying in the Marine Corps, which is something that is definitely, I think, one of the biggest challenges in the Marine Corps. Is you get a lot of guys just get so disgruntled with how their time is kind of played out, and especially like with you and I, our time in, a lot of guys during that time joined the Marine Corps to go fight in a war,
right?
And that some of them unfortunately missed that opportunity just because we were born on the wrong days, kind of thing. So some of those guys missed that opportunity, and that alone caused a great level of like disappointment, basically. Like,
right.
Oh, the Marine Corps let me down. Not in the sense of like, oh, the Marine Corps, I get yelled at. It's like, no, the Marine Corps, this has been something I've been like almost fantasizing about my entire life, and now I'm here, and this is it, and it's just not meeting my expectations. So tapping into those younger guys, and even today, they're still joining with that like expectation that we're all kicking indoors and we're doing something great every minute of our day.
Right.
So finding, like, as a leader, finding that and like being able to motivate that can be quite the challenge. And it's turning, and as we've moved farther and farther away from when we were at war and we're falling more into peacetime Marine Corps, um, it's just becoming more and more of a challenge because it's not stopping kids joining thinking that they're going to go fight somewhere, kind of thing. So um, that's definitely a struggle. In 3-8, I kind of met that because it was a very like, um, you haven't been to combat, or I'm not going to combat, so why would I listen to you? And I gotta be like kind of the voice of reason and be like, listen, that's not what it's all about. Um, my like we talking about Serrano, he was my squad leader on that first Afghan deployment. He didn't have any combat experience before that deployment, and he was a squad leader. And I cannot emphasize enough that man, there's no man that could have done a better job on a deployment than he did. So I'm a firm believer in, and like as much as I would love to be like, oh yeah, experience is everything. It's the more time you have in the firefight, like the better leader you are. That's just not the case.
No.
Like there's just good leaders and then there's bad leaders, and how you develop those leaders is really what makes a difference, and how much you want to bury your time into like knowing everything. I mean, Serrano, that dude could take apart a radio and put it back together and look at like the comm guy and be like, this is what's wrong with the radio, you need to fix it. You know what I mean? Like he knew more about those radios than those comm dudes did. And I mean, he knew more about the trucks than the motor T guys. And he just knew, he was that guy that was like, went, learned everything there is to know about that thing, came back. If I remember correctly, he carried around like manuals to things, like the manual to a radio, and would like go in. He was like, that was what he did like with his free time, was read. So I think there's a misconception that if you're like rocking a car on your ribbon stack, that just makes you a good Marine, and unfortunately, that's not the case.
No.
I guess I guess that's kind of good because we're getting to a point in the Marine Corps where that's that's not a common thing to have, and I think I can be like the spokesman and be like, hey, that's not what makes somebody successful in combat. What makes you successful in combat is up here, and like everybody has the power to influence what's up there. So 3-8, I think I was kind of fighting that battle, trying to keep people motivated, and I'm never going to be like stay in the Marine Corps, like the Marine Corps is the place for you, but I try to kind of play the devil's advocate, whether they are getting in or staying in, or getting out or staying in. I try to kind of play the devil's advocate for them and try to confirm that they're set and they have a good idea. Because one of the things just being in for the time that I have been in that I hate is seeing guys get out and then just like they're out for 3 days and they wish they were back in the Marine Corps, which is frustrating for me because I'm just like, it's not like, oh, you should have stayed in, you should have listened to me. It's just like, I wish you would have thought it out a little bit more and try to plan out and understand that, yeah, getting out of the Marine Corps is not going to be an easy process. And I'm not going to sit on some like higher step stool because I haven't experienced that yet. I have not gotten out of the warm, embracing arms of the Marine Corps yet. And at some point, I will experience that. And all you motivators that decide to get out are going to look at me and laugh while I stumble around for a little bit. So I don't think that there's an easy transition out of the Marine Corps. A lot of people can play that story and play the social media game where they're taking pictures of themselves on a beach and drinking a mimosa or doing something crazy. But there's a reality that, the reason you're bringing this up,
right.
There's a reality to getting out of the Marine Corps that isn't out there. And it's not an easy transition, and leaving 1-7, I'm still in the Marine Corps. Leaving Suicide Charlie was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do because there was relationships that I had that I'll never have again in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Just as you grow up as a leader, it just becomes a different game. Like when you're a Lance Corporal and the weekend comes, you load up into a car with 6 other dudes, you go down to San Diego, LA, wherever, and you get in a room with 2 beds and you guys spend every minute of that weekend together. And that's not only normal, but that is preferred. That is like your ideal weekend. And as you get older, that's not really the case because that's just not who you're surrounded by anymore. I think 2 weekends ago, me, Higgs, Wiz, Jeff, And Degnan, we all just went down to the Navy Army game and did exactly that. Went to a 2-bedroom, like one bed in a hotel because that's all that was available in Philly, and like without even skipping a beat, I felt like I was a Lance Corporal again, like
Yeah.
just hanging out with the boys. And so that's something that you just immediately that gets immediately taken away from you get out of the Marine Corps. And I think that kind of like safety blanket almost for a lot of dudes is like a shock. It almost sends them into a shock, like, oh fuck, what am I doing with my life right now? Like, why did I leave that? Why did I leave my safety blanket? Like, that was so good. When I feel like a lot of people don't realize, like, no, the Marine Corps has giving you the tools to be very successful. And you just got to realize, sometimes just realizing what's in your tool belt can kind of send you on that right path. Because all these guys, like, I mean, everyone I just mentioned, they're all in pursuit of basically their PhDs. And I think that's a group of guys that has tapped into, like Higgs, Degnan, Jeff, and Wiz, Tim. They've all realized, like, okay, I have a lot of freaking tools right now. There's a lot of things that I can do, and they're all just tapping into them. And I can I can almost, I don't want to speak for them, but I can say that every one of them got out of the Marine Corps, and there was whether it was a moment or a little bit of a time where there was some stumbling and bumbling getting out of the Marine Corps, like, okay, this is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. But it's just about finding out what you have, really. If you could just fall back on, like, my experiences with the Marine Corps, if I got out today, I know that I'm a more disciplined human being than I was when I was out of the Marine Corps. And I think that just from that, I think college becomes more of an obtainable goal now if I do get out of the Marine Corps at some point. Just a lot of things that weren't possible before are possible now because of what the Marine Corps gave me. And just kind of finding the positivity in that, and understanding, like, hey, like, yeah, the Marine Corps might have sucked really bad, but it did give me the things that I needed, and I can be successful, kind of thing. So, now get back on track, finish up with the timeline here. So yeah, 3-8, got back from my UDP. Never want to go on a UDP again, but it was an experience that I wouldn't change at all. Get to go to Okinawa, Japan, which is obviously like a historical landmark for us, especially being in the 7th Marines. So being in the Pacific was really cool. Didn't get to do as much like historical stuff as I would have liked to do, but I mean, just being there and just looking out into the ocean and being like, holy shit, like, there were some guys that had no idea what was going on a ship, like,
Yeah.
just rolling into Japan, and then they went and did great things, and that was just that alone kind of felt cool to me. Got to go to, like, Philippines and Thailand and train with their forces, and that was a super humbling experience. Very cool to see. Talking about just tacticians, guys that are just, I mean, guys will be in for 20 years and they'll really never leave the kind of the rank structure. I guess it's just like a basic Lance Corporal or a Corporal. Like, they just kind of stay. They, like, have crafts and they become excellent at it. It's really cool to watch. I got back from that while I was in Okinawa. I went to the MCWSS course, and which is, I mean, it stands for Marine Corps Instructor of Water Survival. Basically, like, we just run swim quals, do all that fun stuff. Pretty challenging course. I think the average weight loss in that course was like 15 pounds. So
Yeah.
for like a brief moment in time, I didn't have the dad bod anymore. That went away. Yeah, it's a 3-week course, and got back, tried to pursue some, like, a higher level of training, tried to go to, like, MARSOC and Recon, but just because of seniority, wasn't able to go down that route right now. So I called the monitor and was just like, I knew I needed a break from deployments. It's been 5 years and I did 4 deployments, and now it's like I need a little bit of a break if I'm not able to keep going with Recon or MARSOC. So I called them and I was just like, hey, is there any opening for a MCWSS out there that I can go, like, be an instructor trainer, like an IT? And luckily for me, there was, just right over on Camp Johnson. So that's what I'm doing now. I've been there for a year now, and I got 2 more years left in the tank, and then I'll be back to the fleet. But that's a long story short right there of my career so far. So But
Definitely. And you,
yeah,
dude, oh my God. Like, I'm glad you sat down and talked to me, because you basically just covered everything I wanted to ask you, but I only asked you one question, and we pretty
yeah,
much covered it all. So that was great. And I'd like to take a few parts of that you highlighted. And it's so weird for me to sit here and, like, I definitely want to give you a platform and let you talk, and because I want this experience to be about you and your story. And for some reason, like, you're able to identify um, uh, the ongoing trends, especially the negative trends, not only in the Marine Corps but also outside the Marine Corps, because you have such close friends, like Higgs and those guys. And it's so weird to hear that from every single person I talk to. Is they're immediately able to identify that that there's a transition process, and it's a lot more difficult than most people think. And it's something I've said, probably 1,000 times, is I won't get too deep into my Marine Corps experience, but like, I knew for a fact that I was going to get out. The family thing was a big thing for me. Like, I had to leave my 3-month-old right before we left for Kuwait. And through that entire process, I was just an internal battle every single day. Like, I couldn't get that out of my head. So when I got back, I was like, you know what? Yeah, that this is it for me. And so I decided to get out. And like, from the time we got back till the time I got out, like, everything was like planned, I guess, in my head. My move back, application for a job, finding a house, all that stuff. And within 2 weeks, everything I had planned for the past year went. And
yeah.
it's like,
And
what do
I
I
think,
do? Go ahead.
yeah, and you just saying that makes me like, the way I said it probably sounded wrong, but like me being like, I wish you would have planned. I guess that's just me, like, like wanting the best for everybody, and like,
Right.
you're getting out, and I want you to be successful. And like I said, I'm sitting here from like a perspective. I haven't gotten out. I haven't separated from the Marine Corps, so it's easy to be like, oh, I wish you would have planned more. But I think that's just why we're having this conversation, because I don't think anybody knows the answer. Like,
No.
nobody's figured this out yet. Because if they did, they're a fucking asshole, because we don't know the fucking secrets yet.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that there is kind of that, and maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's just kind of what we need to go through, and why we need to be like. That just makes us who we are. But I think that's just a great reason why, just alone, why you're doing this, gives us a chance to just talk about it,
Yeah.
whether it's from a perspective of I haven't gotten out yet or not.
But yeah, like, with my transition and thinking, like you said, maybe it's just all part of it. And taking in everything that's happened since I left the Marine Corps, I guess, yeah, I even though there's been some things I absolutely regret and I wish never happened, they did happen, and now I have to live with it. But now I feel like I'm moving in a good direction. Like, because when I get out, and I don't know what it is, but it seems like, and I haven't really pinned this down yet, but I think there's an overwhelming sense of loneliness, maybe, that these veterans who you exit these organizations to where they are surrounded, like you said, you would go every single weekend. You had weekend off. You would go with 6 dudes, pile in a car, and sleep literally right next to these people.
Yeah.
Every single waking second, no matter what. So you always had somebody there next to you, and going through that for however many years, the minimum enlistment's at least 4 years, and then going back to it's just you. Like, it's extremely weird, and I haven't really been able to explain it the way I wanted to yet. But I mean, every single time I sit down and talk to somebody, they understand what I'm trying to say, and they can take it and explain it a lot better than I can, because I suck at this. But everybody seems to know what's going on, but I don't think we've yet to understand and yet to universally talk about what it is. And is it the fact that we feel like we are alone, and that we're not establishing good positive communication with those we had, and they can be still in the military. I think there is that dynamic that you're still in the Marine Corps and I'm out, so how could you understand? But at the same time, it doesn't matter. It's like you're Donnie. We served together in suicide for 2 deployments. Like, if you're the only person I could get a hold of, and you have the time and you're willing, like, I should be able to sit down and talk to you and open up about anything, because I know you genuinely care, number one, and two, you have the leadership skills and that just persona to be able to hear somebody, dump whatever in front of you and be able to, talk them through it or whatever. And I think right before everything crashed, I wanted to take a second because you talked a lot about your when you first showed up to the fleet, 1-7 suicide, and then having that leadership, and then that pretty much shaping you. And I think we all show up to the fleet, like pretty young, basically immature. Just in general, we're all like 18, 19, 20-year olds. We're all pretty immature at that point. And you get through that first deployment, you come back, then you're on top of the world, and then you have to settle back down because then you start to work up again, and then you have your three younglings like right behind you. And in your case, you ended up doing a whole entire another deployment as a squad leader. So I got to see Lance Corporal Hess, and then I got to see Corporal Hess, and I got to see Sergeant Hess, and it was honestly, it was an incredible transformation. And for some reason, like when you hear the name Hess, like it there's just there's something there. And when it comes to terms of suicide, like when you think about there's a few individuals, as soon as you start talking about suicide, like you're absolutely one of those guys, because one, you were there for so long, and two, I just, for some reason, I always heard your name being called out, whether it was from weapons company, it was from third, it was from second. Like if Donny was walking around, all you heard is Donny. And that's the brotherhood, and it's extremely hard to explain that, but I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
For sure.
And that's why I think, like, we as individuals, especially those who are capable and able, like, should start stepping out, start being more prominent, even if it is on social media, and posting, hey, here's my cell phone number, if you need to talk, you can come talk to me. And by way of this is me just meeting up with fellow Marines that I served with, and just talking about a few things and just establishing that form of communication. It's not difficult. I mean, to be honest, it's a little awkward because, I mean, for some reason, I feel like you were the cool kid in high school, and I was just the nerd, the quiet kid who stood in the corner, and now we're chatting, and it's great, dude. I mean, I'm pretty sure if the situation and things were different, like we definitely could have got along. But at the end of the day, we were still Marines in the same company. We still know the same individuals, who one are out and still in the Marine Corps all across, and then there's the individuals we both knew who are no longer with us, and that's an entirely different conversation, and another difficulty that we face. And it's something, I mean, we don't have to get into it, but when I heard about Jackson's passing, like that was not necessarily like a crazy blow on me, but I just knew like what that did to First Platoon.
Yeah, it was a hard
And
one.
really hard. And I reached out to a couple close up friends I had, like Hogger from First Platoon. I was like, man, I feel so sorry, like that this sucks. And there was just like an overwhelming sense of like, God damn it, like why? And that's when my brain really started to turn. I was like, why? Obviously what happened with him and his passing was a tragedy and an accident, but we've also had a recent suicide again in First Platoon, or for 1-7. I think suicide from the generation before me, there's been a few losses, and it's just you hear the statistic 22 a day. I'm not even sure what the active duty suicide rate is, but I'm sure it's probably higher than most statistics in
Yeah.
the civilian world. But that's the negative trend I'm trying to identify, like personally, like just through my own experience and my own reflection, and talking to individuals like you and others, is trying to figure out like what that is. And I mean, you hit on it a few times, but I like to try and get it from you, and what you think, because you clearly understand what's going on. You've identified the struggles. I think if you could share some words on what you think needs to happen. What do you think we could be doing better? I mean, what is it? So I'm all over the place too, dude. I'm not, like I said, I'm not good at this. I'm just trying.
For sure. So I think the first thing being, especially, so our baseline is the infantry, which
Right.
is a special kind of individual. I think from my experiences, just talking with I try to, like you just said, like I try to talk to everybody. I try to absorb why they're there, to get to know them, and kind of get a feel for the people that are around them. And a very consistent story is I come from hard times. I've like had a rough. I mean, not necessarily like, oh, I grew up in a poor family, or like, oh, my father did this or whatever, but more of like I've always kind of not fit in. I've always kind of been an oddball, and um, life has been kind of a challenge for me. Kind of fitting in has been a challenge for me. And then they were like, okay, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And not only am I going to join the Marine Corps, but I'm going to join the infantry because I want to go potentially fight in a war. Like, there's a special kind of individual that joins the infantry and try, like, and that's where their mind wants them to go. I mean, we still work in the volunteer service. Like, everyone that we work with volunteered to be in that position, whether they want to realize it or not. Like, they volunteered to sleep in a fucking hole, and so I think that mindset, that type of individual, kind of separates you from society. Like, and it's not necessarily a barrier that makes you like, like you can't be a normal person, but you're a different breed basically. And I think what happens is you go from a world where you don't really fit in and you're kind of struggling. And this is just kind of talking from personal experiences too. You kind of feel like the black sheep, like the people that run. Then you go into the Marine Corps and you find out that you're not that weird and you're surrounded by people that are just as weird as you are. And everybody's just clicking, everybody's firing, everyone's being successful. Then a lot of guys, I think, they almost oh, their brain becomes almost used to like, this is normal life now. My normal life is being surrounded by people that are just like me. And then for whatever reason, they either stay in the Marine Corps, and I will say, from the standpoint of staying in the Marine Corps, you lose a lot of that. Like, it's not me as a sergeant, soon to be a staff and be a platoon sergeant. That life is a little bit different than what it used to be. It's at lower level, from that lance corporal to corporal rank. It's a much different relationship. But you get out, and now you're not surrounded by those people every day. You're not the baseline anymore. You're that abnormal, human being again. And I think that going from being a black sheep to being part of the team, being part of the family, being back to being the black sheep, I think that transition for people is more overwhelming than for others than it is. You know what I mean? The same thing. I think I compare it a lot to PTSD. Is like a separate diagnosis. I think that you could take 100 people and put them through the exact same amount of stress. Some people are going to be affected much greater than others by that. Some people legitimate, like diagnosed PTSD. Others will have a little bit of stress, and others will just move on with their day and through the exact same amount of stress. And I think that you can compare it the same way to the process of getting into the Marine Corps and separating from the Marine Corps. Some people, it hits a different nerve. Like you talked about, you felt like a feeling of loneliness, which I can relate to, just leaving 1-7. I think that feeling of loneliness can be amplified by 100 of what you experience, and some people just are very good with moving on with it. But I think that I'm very familiar with depression. It's something that is inside my family, so I've seen it. Know how depression works, and I know that if somebody's feeling loneliness and they have a level of depression stacked on top of that, to a certain degree, I can completely see where it's almost unbearable. And it makes you unable to function. You just feel like you can't breathe. There's like almost like you feel like you've lost your purpose. And there's a lot of things that are going against you. And I think that the trick needs to be that you never forget that there's always people. There's always a phone call away. And it's almost to the point where it's just saying, hey, like almost like you just talked about, like, hey, if anybody needs to call me, pick up the phone. It almost gets said like it's Christmas, so like I'll use this as an example. Like everyone's saying Merry Christmas, like it almost loses its meaning. You know what I mean? People that are super freaking Catholic. I grew up in a Catholic family, so like there's a different meaning to Merry Christmas than just plastering it all over the TV and saying it 1,000 times a day. It's just the same thing. Like you almost become desensitized to the idea, like, oh, this guy actually means that I can call him any time of the day. Like he actually means that. So maybe we need to do a better job just getting the message across, and um, also as well as it goes a lot further. That and I try to do it. There's been a couple nights where me and a couple guys in the city together, and we'll just say, hey, let's call everybody we can think of, and just try that. Instead of saying, hey, call me anytime you need help, try picking up the phone and making a phone call, talking with somebody for 30 minutes to an hour. I think that that's something maybe we need to become more proactive at. Instead of just saying, call me if you're having a hard time. Maybe we all need to be, if you're capable of picking up a phone and you're in that mental state where you can pick up a phone and make a phone call, that's probably what you need to do. And I think that'll be a lot more successful than just saying, just give me a call if you're feeling fucking depressed. And if you're in a deep state of depression and feeling alone, you're probably not going to be like, oh, let me just go call my fucking boy, fucking Anderson. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, that's not where your head's at. You're in that,
Right.
as opposed to me just like, hey, let me pick up the phone and call Anderson. I haven't talked to him in a while. It's been a year. You know what I mean? And then just call him and talk to him for an hour. I think from my standpoint, I've made those phone calls, and I feel like whether it's therapeutic for me or I can kind of hear it over the phone that means a lot to that person I'm calling. That's something I've seen that's something that's helped me get through the day. I live in Wilmington, so I have an hour commute today, so I commute to and from work every day. And there's days where I'm just driving home and I'm just like, I need to talk to somebody from suicide. And I'll literally just go through the contacts and I'll just start calling people, whether it's been a specific person I'm trying to get a hold of or just kind of a random selection. Like, hey, it's been a while. So, and that's just nice to, we talked about it too, just meeting up with like pigs and everybody, getting a chance to come together, have a conversation, and not be on dark times. Because that was like, that's one of the hardest things about ever. I hadn't seen him since I left 1-7. Like I hadn't seen him since I left Suicide Charlie, and I remember leaving and like almost giving the Irish goodbyes to him and the people that I did like leave. That's Irish goodbyes are my most preferred method of departing. Just kind of sneak away under the darkness of like night. And, I don't like to do the goodbye thing. So try to just reach out and be there and have a conversation with those guys, not for a specific reason. I think that makes, in my opinion, I think that can make probably a difference. If you and I picked up the phone today and called everybody from both of our platoons, that's 60 dudes right there, basically. That, 60 dudes, what are the chances that one of them's having a bad day today? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably pretty freaking good. So, and then you could just cause that ripple effect just like that. Just like, hey, dude, like I made my calls. I called the 2012 deployment. Like you called the 2014 deployment. Like call whoever you can, like have a conversation with them. So that would be. I think that's my diagnosis of what one of the contributors make it as difficult of a process, and I think that's the best I can think of. Kind of spitballing is pick up the.
Yeah, forcing the conversation. Basically summarizing everything you just said is forcing the conversation is actually reaching out and making sure you establish, hey, you good? Or like, what's up? It doesn't have to be like, that's something I've been trying to do the past couple months is every couple weeks I'll look through and I leave the messages on my phone and I was like, oh, you know what? I haven't texted this guy in a while. I'm just going to, throw, hey, how you been? And just doing that every couple weeks with just a few core guys that the guys I still talk to this day. We could always sit down and talk to or try and force a conversation with everybody from our platoon. But something I think would be, just as easy as just, your fire team or whoever you had, your team leaders when you were a squad leader, your last point of contact where you could just, divert to, 2, 3, a handful of guys. Cause we all had that core group that we were always around and were really good best friends with. And as long as you can establish that communication with them and, you're hitting them up on the holidays, I think that's absolutely a great idea. And that's something I'm trying to do with this is forcing the conversation. This is reaching across. First platoon, Donny Hess, Sergeant Hess, the squad leader, the top performer, one of the top performers from suicide, and you know, little old fucking Sergeant Anderson from the goddamn armory is peeking through the cage window and saying, "Hey man, can you come sit down and talk to me?" And you know, I always try to reach this from a point of humility, because I've been really honest and open with my military experience, and a lot of the regret I had from the military was that you know, I did try my hardest. I may not have been, you know, a top performer, especially with like tactics and stuff like that, especially when I, you know, went in the infantry. And that's something that's really bugged me since then. And it's something I figured I'd be able to just erase, you know, that Marine side of me, and I could just blend right in. But you said it. You can't go from one environment that's extremely dynamic and try to enter something entirely different. You have that exactly what you said, is you go from a black sheep to a unit, right back to a black sheep, and now you have all that you know, stress and anxiety that you used to be able to just scream and throw shit down the hallway in the barracks, and you know, bring, you know, a few guys in and just cuss and just, you know, talk about some fucked up shit. But it helps you get through that moment. You can't do that in the civilian world. You just can't, especially in a professional environment. So that was something that was a big wake up call for me. Is like, but you nailed it. It's all based in the environment. Now we're inside this environment, but we have tools available, like, you know, Facebook chat. This is just Facebook chat. That's all this is. It's not a fancy, you know, communication device or anything. Is we all have it. It's all on our phones. I can I can send a message to anybody from our 2014 deployment, because I'm mostly friends with them. So I have the capability. I know we all have the capability, and I see we're all active on social media. And a big part of why I'm doing this is to get guys to identify that, you know, even though we're all present on social media, we're, for some reason, there's still guys slipping through the cracks, and we're losing a few, and we're losing in a larger scale. We're losing a lot every single day. And you know, I don't want to keep bringing this conversation back down, but like I think you nailed it, and that's actually forcibly reaching out and communicating with your guys. And I want to do it with a lot more. I'm actually should be talking to Roe here pretty soon. He's gonna do it. Sorry,
Who?
Roe Dylan.
Yep.
So I got him, but I'm gonna keep trying to pinpoint certain guys in the company, because I think you are absolutely going to draw a lot more attention. But the fact that you're willing to take an hour out of your, you know, weekend, which I know you're a busy dude, and sit down and talk to me, hopefully that hits at least one person. And you know, I'm going to do this for the entire year 2019 of trying to reach out to veterans, active duty, law enforcement, all those, and try to hit those communities, because I think all those communities are suffering as well. And I think it's just, it comes down to communication. It's feeling welcome. It's feeling open. It's feeling okay to come out and say, hey, look, I'm struggling, and being able to speak to somebody who's mature enough to understand that, because we both come from the infantry community, and it'd be extremely hard and difficult to try and talk to everybody about, you know, depression, or, you know, I'm just bummed out. Most of the time, you know, especially, you know, if you're in that environment, it's like, just suck it the fuck up. And there's absolutely a part to that, especially when you're operating as a military unit. There's also the part of, okay, you know, come on, let's sit down and figure this out, because if you're not 100% in here, then you can't perform. And that translates from military operations, and that translates to just trying to be a regular dude, you know, a father, an employee at a company, just an everyday citizen. Is you have to be okay up here, and everybody experiences things differently. You explained it. It can be the exact same situation, and it affects 3 different people, or many different people, in different varieties. So it's important to acknowledge and be mature enough to, you know, identify that, and then go from there. It's not all just suck it the fuck up. It's not all you know, oh, you know, it's not just trying to get sympathy or get you to do something for me. You may have knowledge and advice and guidance, and that's what leadership is. And like, you have, I think you've absolutely shown your leadership in this video, because you've been able to take a few short questions, but you've been through this route before, I can tell, and you hit a rhythm. and I'm just babbling. That's all I feel like I'm doing right now. It's just babbling. But like I was able to get some genuine good responses from you, and I know I hope a lot of people see that. I hope a lot of people gain attention from that, and that's the whole, like, I'm trying to blend this with social media, and I'm trying to get more people, more individuals to do this as well. Because if we can just do this with, you know, a few guys, if I just do it with my fire team, that's the 3 guys, and the other fire team or guy does it with 3 other guys, you know, it comes down to that same 3 number we always heard. Like, you only have to worry about 3. If we can start doing that now in the veteran community, I think we can start covering a lot more gaps and making sure it's just getting guys to participate, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just on I think that your job, just by the fact that I'm able to talk a lot from the questions you ask, that just goes like, I listen to like podcasts like Joe Rogan. I'm not sure if you do, but like,
Yeah.
you really listen. Joe Rogan, like, if Joe Rogan asks the right question, he's not talking. Like, Elon Musk is over there just going to town, like, just, and that just goes from like you being a good interviewer, which I think you're doing. Like, that's an outstanding job. You're making it super comfortable. It's not like a weird thing where I feel like I'm just sitting here like, what the hell does this guy want me to talk?
Yeah.
No, dude, you're asking a good question, and I'm able to just go with that. And then I think it's a very natural conversation going on. So I think that you're killing it right now. So I'm happy to be a part of it, and I hope that I hope this keeps growing the way it's been. I think even if your reach doesn't reach outside the company, which I know it, but like even if you're just like impacting guys from Suicide Charlie, that's a reason enough to keep doing what you're doing. And I think that putting a year's work, you see all these successful companies, like, it's just about grinding it out and just keep. I mean, if you ever, so every, I'll go with this because I'm kind of sporadically shooting right now, but all of my friends have been successful outside the military, starting businesses. Like, I have a couple friends that are in like clothing line, do like military clothing, and all of them said you cannot go in with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, if you're going to do something, you need to put both feet in on it. You need to put your head down, and you need to go. Because a lot of people will do the, like, I'll start this on the side and see how this works out, and it's just gonna fizzle out and die. Because if you're not passionate about it, then why should I be buying it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not stereotypical like leader, but like, if you're not sold on your plan, why the fuck would I follow you? Like, why the fuck would I do that?
Right.
So you doubling down the way you have, and you're showing people like, hey, this is something I'm passionate about and I'm being serious about. I think that alone, like, that mentality is going to keep driving people and keep having people buy in, dude. And that's all it is. Have people buy into your mission statement and what you're about, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and better for you. I'm pretty excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And this is like the most humble thing I can do right now is provide you with just a screen capture software of our conversation on Facebook chat. Like, this isn't a professional studio or anything like that. But you know, there's no telling, like you said, if I put the time, I put the grind to it every single day, see what this becomes. And at the end of the day, you know, this is all for charity. But if I don't raise a ton of money, that's fine. If I get to sit down and talk with everybody from suicide, and then they get to share that with their family and their friends, and they get to see a different side of them, a more you know, mature, and it doesn't have to be mature. They can show a side of them that, you know, they would be comfortable showing anywhere else, but with, you know, their fellow Marines and fellow veterans. Because, you know, we can just all behave a certain way. We can get as erratic and fucking crazy as we want, especially when we're around our fellow, you know, veterans and active duty military, because that's just the way it is. And it's an entirely different behavior once you get out and once you're not around those individuals. And I always just feel like, when I'm always sitting in a conversation with, like, you know, maybe my wife and her friend, or I'm at some event, stuff like that, and I'm stuck between 2 guys talking about whatever, and I always think to myself, like, what would we be talking about right now if we were in the field, and you know, just at the smoke pit, just the 3 of us. Like, I try to think of the most fucked up shit, but I can't say anything, and it's boring. But I mean, I don't know what I'm trying to say there otherwise, other than, you know, when we sit down and talk to one another, it doesn't matter if we babble. It doesn't matter if we struggle with what we're trying to say. I think you identify what I'm trying to do, and I'm not the best messenger. I feel like I'm not the best messenger, but that little bit of encouragement you just gave me is sometimes the thing I need to keep this going, because it's not easy. It's not easy being, you know, this public about everything, especially with everything I did, you know, in the past couple months. But I'm trying to come at a very genuine approach, and you know, this is not for followers. I mean, yes, I'm trying to raise money, but all that money is trying to go to nonprofits. But what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to let everybody know, and at least suicide, that it's okay to sit down and talk to somebody. It doesn't matter. You if you can reach out and talk to Hess, and you know, Sergeant Hess. You may have known, you probably weren't in the squad. You probably weren't, but you know, it doesn't have to be you. It can be anybody, and that's what I'm trying to get across. I just, every time I try to explain it, I start babbling, because I still don't know what this is, but it's worth trying. It's worth experimenting with, and it's worth doing at its, or, you know, amateur stage with the
Yep.
screen capture. And you know, in a couple months, if I have a more professional setup, I absolutely would love to have you back on, because I think you can share a lot of knowledge. I mean, I think I asked you like 2 questions, and you covered everything. Like, you literally covered everything. And I'm gonna try and edit this and throw a few highlights. But if you could say one thing to all the suicide guys, like, what would it be
Uh,
about?
I would say I'm proud of everybody. Everybody that I've been in contact with, or I've kind of been following since I've left, they're making me super proud. I look back at pictures of like our groups basically, and I go down the line, and I've seen everybody achieving their dreams basically, and that makes me happy seeing them pursuing that. So I'm super proud of everybody. Like we talked about, pick up the phone. I know that sounds super generic, and we talked about that already, kind of contradicting what I said, but like, I promise you, I will never ignore a phone call from one of you guys from suicide. I think there's a family bond that we kind of have kind of talked about a little bit, but there's a bond there that will never be broken. And I think that everybody realizes that. Just sometimes they forget it, and that's where we talked about like them feeling alone and stuff. So just try to stay in touch with everybody. Don't get to that point where you can't pick up the phone anymore.